ordered new air struts for the front. Once we put it in extended height mode in the shop, we could hear the front passenger one bleed off till it got to a certain height and then stopped leaking. But then the driver's side front would actually bleed off as well, constantly. So we got those on order. We also ordered new lifting rods. You can see these are lift rods, but they have the bushings are completely wore out. So we're going with the Rhino lift rods. It's got a better bushing. Looking at my scanner, we can see the left rear height sensor. The supplied voltage to the sensor is 4.92 volts, but the actual value reading back from the sensor itself was 0. So we started troubleshooting there. We ended up finding that damaged, broken sensor wire or electrical wire. We resoldered that and got it working, but we still had some erratic values from the sensors. So we're going to go ahead and replace all 4 height sensors once they come in. And then we'll do a calibration on the height sensors. Looking through all the error codes that we had between the various modules, the transmission module, engine control module, transfer case module, ride height suspension module, we saw a common theme. Biggest one was communication error, like this one, lost communication with ride height control, ride level control module. This is from the transfer case module. Then we also had a clutch actuator circuit high. But then on the other modules, like your transmission, your suspension, your engine, we got the same one of invalid data received from the transfer case module. Since we saw this on the other ones, we kind of turned our focus to thinking there was something going on with the transfer case control module. Again, this one the vehicle would not go into low range. Hill descent feature was not available. Transmission was limited to, what was the wording? Certain gears. Terrain response system would not do anything. No lights would come on, no options. It would just display on the dash unavailable. So we started troubleshooting. We removed the battery. And behind the battery, there's a little access panel. If you pop that loose, it'll give you access to the transfer case control module. When we started taking this battery out, we did notice somebody had been in there. Some of the wire connectors were broken that kind of hold it to the bulkhead. But sure enough, once we pulled that transfer case module out, we were surprised at what we saw. So here's the transfer case control module removed from the vehicle. You can see right back in that little cubby behind the battery is where we found it, and all kinds of corrosion on the connector and the module connections itself.
Yeah, yours has better picture.
We were surprised actually how much corrosion was there. The plug doesn't look damaged, but we're definitely concerned about the control module. So my son decided to open it up and see what he could find inside.
Yes,
we found several areas on the circuit board itself that were corroded.
Just those two spots.
Initial look, it didn't look like it was damaged.
That's visible.
It was just had some surface corrosion, which was basically probably shorting out different parts of the circuit board.
What are you using?
So he went ahead and tried cleaning it. We figured it wouldn't hurt anything. So he spent some time just cleaning up the areas where he could see.
Let's use a brush one then.
Corrosion. Looking for any damage. Just being careful not to cause any more damage.
Probably rinse this stuff.
Yeah.
I can feel stuff on there. Use this one?
Yeah. Just like little lightly. And then hose it off. Is there any connections or leads there? So we can't tell if it's jumped it or not. Let me see. Just look, comparing it here to here.
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
Usually, these are connected here through this right here. That's what I figured out. Those different discoloration in them. Blew it all over the place.
This stuff dries really good.
Edit that out. Actually, it does look like it might have melted.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about.
Usually, if it already melted once, it'll melt twice again, especially if it's energy running through it.
So while my son was cleaning the circuit board, I was actually cleaning the terminal, the plug on the vehicle itself, when I noticed a pin was still in the plug. We went back and looked at the circuit board, and you can see in that left connector area, the top row, third one from the left, is missing on the circuit board. So that was actually still in the connector. So at that point, we didn't think it was worthwhile trying to salvage that control module. And my son likes to take that kind of stuff apart and play with it and try to understand how they work. So that's going to go into his little project bin, and we went ahead and ordered one from eBay. It was a used one, and we got it in, put it in the vehicle, and voila, everything was working. We were surprised actually how well it worked. All the terrain response features were available. Transfer case module, or transfer case, would go into low range. Hill descent mode, control mode would activate. So far everything's working on the transfer side and terrain response side. Since we plan on putting in larger tires, we decided to go ahead and install a bump stop extension, you can see here, with limiting straps. We wanted to do this that way if we have an air system failure, it'll ride on those and still be able to drive around with the oversized tires. This is the rear. We have the new sensor installed, the bump stop extensions, and the limiting straps. Here's the front air struts that we got. We ended up getting the R0 replacement air struts. We went ahead and installed the bump stop extensions on these as well, and installed them on the front. This kind of shows you the difference. Everything bolted right in. The R0 seems a little bit better. Here's the driver's side front. You can see we installed new ride height sensor and the new Rhino lift rods. We have the limiting strap and bump stop extension installed with the new air strut. We did notice the ball joints boots were cracked, so we ended up replacing the ball joints, but on the driver's side, when we went to install the new ball joint, there was so much movement in it, we had replaced the whole control arm. We also replaced the inner and outer tie rod assembly and the lower ball joints. There was some play in the tie rods. I think the inner tie rod joints, since we had it tore apart, it was just easier just to do all the tie rods, both upper and lower ball joints. Of course, on the driver's side, we had to do the whole control arm. So at this point, we have all 4 new height sensors installed, 2 front air struts replaced, the bump stop extensions and limit straps on all 4 corners, new tie rod ends, inner and outer, on both passenger and driver side, new upper and lower ball joints, including a control arm on the driver's. So we went to try to calibrate the air suspension. Unfortunately, we could not calibrate it, no many times we tried, because it was still out of whack. It was just detecting something at a range. The only thing we could figure out is we noticed there was actually 3 different brands and sizes of tires on the vehicle. So we went ahead and put an order in. So we're waiting on tires so we can calibrate the air suspension. Once that's done, hopefully that'll allow us to calibrate the suspension. So we had an error code for the oxygen sensor on bank 1. We went ahead and replaced it, put fresh fuel in it, cleaned the mass airflow sensor, and took it for a test drive. The only code we're getting now in the engine is this fuel trim bank 1. So this could be there's a lot of causes for this particular code, possible causes I should say. So we went ahead and just started with the basics. We wanted to do a tune-up anyways. We don't know how long the last time it's been done and if it was done right. So replace the air filter. Again, we already cleaned the mass airflow sensor. We did an inspection on hoses and stuff like that on the engine, and we had already replaced the oxygen sensor. So now we're gonna move on. We picked up the spark plugs, and we're gonna change the spark plugs. So you can see here, as we're pulling the spark plugs, some of them, the two on the right are out of the vehicle. The one on the left is the replacement one. The one in the middle, we pulled out of cylinder number 4, and number 5 was similar to this one. What we found is that they'd never been changed. Looks like they pulled the coils out and the rubber boots stuck to the spark plugs. And you can see the two on the outside are the ones that got stuck in the engine. Here you can see the chunks of the rubber boot. Took us quite a while to dig all these out with a pick out of those 2 spark plug holes. Once we got those all dug out, then we were finally able to get a spark plug socket onto the spark plug and remove the spark plug. So it looks like they didn't change those 2 spark plugs and just shoved the coils back in there, and it wasn't getting a good contact. So we went ahead and replaced it with 2 NGK coils and new plugs. So all 8 cylinders have new plugs, and cylinders 4 and 5 have new coils. We're excited. Our tires showed up. I've never tried the Yokohama tires, so I'm kind of excited to do a little test of them. These are the Yokohama Geolander MT. It's a mud terrain tire, load range E, so we should be able to air them down off-road. I like the tread pattern. I'm curious to see how they hold up. I saw a lot of good reviews online. So we'll see. This will be a good test for it. We'll definitely do some videos on the review of the tire themselves. With the new tires on the Land Rover, it was time to calibrate the suspension. I put the blue tape on there, and then I marked a vertical line. That way I always measured at the same point. And then I measured at the bottom of the center cap. I had already taken a measurement and determined what the diameter of the center cap was and what center point would be, and I subtracted that from my measuring. So I always measured from the bottom of the cap up to the same point, and then subtracted the distance from the center cap. This worked really well. The first time we calibrated it, it did fail, and we thought to ourselves, well, maybe they didn't put the right air pressure in there, and that's having a big effect. And sure enough, the air pressure wasn't the same. So we went around and set all the air pressure to the same within 1 or 2 psi of each other. Did the calibration again, and it succeeded. So keep that in mind. You need to have all the same size tires, tire brands, and also the correct air pressure if you're going to do a calibration. Now this calibration was done with my Max Assist scanner. I know there's other tools out there, so the process may be different, but mine is just a basic factory type calibration. Once we did that, the vehicle goes through its cycle, and it seems to work just fine now. Ready for a test drive. Unfortunately, the test drive ended quicker than we wanted. We started overheating. So we pulled over, take a look, and we find the culprit. We're letting it cool down before we move it back to the shop.
All right, this is the coolant reservoir tank off the LR3. What we ended up having is a coolant leak right along the seam. It was spraying right directly at the radiator. Almost looked like the radiator was leaking, but it's hard to tell here. But if you look inside, see if the camera picks it out, the seams are starting to separate. Something to think about. We got a coolant leak, so we went ahead and replaced this